Hello, my name is Tanya McLeod, and the topic I chose for my final project is on workplace discrimination. While the topic of workplace discrimination is very broad, my focus is going to be on how it came to be. Back in the early 1940s, there was a lot of racial discriminations taking place in our country between African Americans and whites. As time moved on, people wanted to end the discrimination and start pushing for equal civil rights. This push led to the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and then eventually the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission was created. The Title VII of the Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination against employees, applicants, and union members on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, or gender at any stage of employment. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, otherwise known as the EEOC, monitors the compliance of the Title VII and ensures work environments are free from unlawful discrimination and harassment and provides employees with equal opportunities for jobs, training, and development. So why did I choose this topic? I chose this topic because it's still an ongoing issue today, and I have personally witnessed it with my own eyes. This intrigued me to research this topic and learn how it came to be and develop into what it is today. So now for a little bit of history on the topic. From the end of World War II until the late 1960s, this time period is often referred to as America's Second Reconstruction. This name was given because this is the time when our nation began to correct civil and human rights abuse that was present within our society. The major issue was still racial discrimination. African Americans were not allowed to vote, integration was needed in the military, and there was unequal political representation between whites and African Americans. On top of all the racial discrimination, it was also becoming known about discrimination taking place within the workplace for various reasons that we will discuss later in this presentation. So here are a few examples of where early court cases that helped this topic to become relevant. The Smith versus Allwright case was back in 1923. The Texas Democratic Party required all voters in its primary to be white based on state law authorizing the party to establish its own internal rules. Lonnie E. Smith, a black dentist, a voter in Harrison County, Texas, sued county election official S.S. Allwright for the right to vote in the primary. In an opinion written by Justice Stanley F. Reed, the court struck down the law. The court reasoned that the rule restricting primary voters to whites denied Smith equal protection under the law in violation of the 14th Amendment. By delegating its authority to the Democratic Party to regulate its primaries, the state was allowing discrimination to be practiced, which was found to be unconstitutional. The Brown versus the Board of Education case was also a very widely known case back in the early times of the Second Reconstruction. This case was a consolidation of cases arising in Kansas, South Carolina, Virginia, Delaware, and Washington, D.C., relating to the segregation of public schools on the basis of race. In each of these cases, African American students had been denied admittance to certain public schools based on laws allowing public education to be segregated by race. They argued that such segregation violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The plaintiffs were denied relief in the lower courts based on Plessy v. Ferguson, which held that racially segregated public facilities were legal so long as the facilities for blacks and whites were equal. This was also known as the separate but equal doctrine. But in conclusion of this case, separate but equal educational facilities for racial minorities is inherently unequal, violating the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The court reasoned that the segregation of public education based on race instilled a sense of inferiority that had a hugely detrimental effect on the education and personal growth of African American children. The last example of court cases are known as the reappointment cases. In the early 1960s, the Supreme Court rendered a string of decisions known as the reappointment cases that fundamentally changed the voting landscape for African Americans. In no uncertain terms, the court required that representation in federal and state legislatures be based substantially on population. Baker v. Carr upheld lawsuits that challenged districts apportioned to enforce voting discrimination against minorities, and the Gray versus Sander case invalidated Georgia's county unit voting system, giving rise to the concept one man, one vote. Over the course of time, the topic of workplace discrimination now involves more topics than just racial discrimination issues. We now deal with sexual harassment, different skill levels, sexual orientation, pregnancy, family life, disabilities, and age discrimination. As society has changed and evolved, so has the many types of discrimination that we now face, as you can see listed here. So here are some examples of recent court cases of workplace discrimination still taking place in our world today. Even with the Civil Rights Act, Title VII, and the EEOC, workplace discrimination is still a major problem in our society today. The Calaf versus Ford Motor Company case was in March of 2018. A federal jury in Michigan ruled that Calaf was subjected to workplace discrimination by a high-level executive at Ford Motor Company that he reported to. Calaf was awarded $17 million in this case. In Cahill versus Nike Inc. was about 4 women who worked in the corporate headquarters that claimed that Nike violated the Equal Pay Act and ignored rampant sexual harassment. This case has been ongoing since 2016 and is still currently in the court process. A very recent example of this topic in our local news is back on June 4th of 2019, Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer and state legislatures announced it would introduce a bill that would protect LGBTQ individuals from forms of discrimination when it comes to employment, housing, and more. Gretchen Whitmer is quoted, "In the year 2019, nobody should be fired from their job or evicted from their home based on who they love or how they identify." As you can see, workplace discrimination is still a major topic in our society, whether it be worldwide, whether it just be in the United States, or it's simply happening right in our own capital here in Lansing. So workplace discrimination has a long way to go and will probably always happen, but the rules and laws are keep coming, and they keep being put into place to help protect everybody and every citizen's equal rights. I hope you all have enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you have gained more knowledge of how the topic of workplace discrimination came to be. Thank you all for listening and viewing. God bless.